All right, what's going on, guys? It's Fast Cars, Fast Money, and we're back. It is Talladega weekend. We're back on a super speedway. It's the first time we're back at one of these tracks since the Daytona 500 at the beginning of the year. So it's always an exciting time for NASCAR DFS just because there is a lot of unique strategy that goes into these weekends. A lot of drivers have these races circled as kind of their main chance to win. So we'll be breaking it down for you guys, trying to give you our thought process of how we're approaching this race. It's going to be very similar to the Daytona 500 video that we did at the beginning of the year. But real quickly, a little bit of housekeeping. Any questions you guys have, you can throw them over on Twitter. It's at FastCarsFM, or you can drop them down in the comments below. We'll make sure we get back to you before the contest locks. And then once you guys are done building the Xfinity lines, hop over and check out our Cup video, which will be out probably around the same time as well. So let's get into the preview and initial thoughts. So especially with the Xfinity series, this should probably be a wreck fest. These guys are super aggressive. There's no give and take. So I'm expecting a lot of drivers to wreck out, whether it's their fault or not, because everyone's going to be basically underneath a blanket. Because of that, you really want to focus your lines on playing most of these guys from the back. You want to focus more on starting position instead of salary or even sometimes the driver. You just want to look at more of where they're starting because place differential is so much more important here. But with that being said, if you want to take down some of these big tournaments, you have to take some risks. You got to play some of these guys starting up front. Some of them are going to be optimal. Some of them are going to score well. It's just, can you get lucky enough to land on those ones that don't wreck out? Because if you play a guy that starts up front and he wrecks out, it's going to kill your line. But if you play a guy starting, 35th and he wrecks out, there's still a good chance that you can cash. Normally, when you get to these weekends too, you want to try to leave money on the table. It might feel a little bit uncomfortable only spending like 40 to 45,000 of the 50 grand that you have, but historically, those are the lines that score better. But it's still, the good equipment should still run towards the front of the pack. So you still want to sprinkle some of those better cars in your line. And then what I do, and I think what Rich does as well, is you kind of look at the starting grid, 1 through 40, and then kind of find certain cutoff points of, maybe it's 1st through 12th, and then 13th through 24th, and then 25th on back. And then just pick a certain amount of drivers in those cut ranges. So whether that's one guy in the top 12, 2 guys in that 13 to 24 range, 3 guys from 25th on back, so on and so forth. That's kind of how I approach them. Is that kind of what you do as well, Rich? Or?
Yeah, absolutely. I think in like cash games, you just want to play everybody starting 25th on back. But like in GPPs, absolutely, you want to take risks and grab guys that are in the top 10, top 15, maybe a couple of those guys, because if they're up front and running up front, there's a great chance that they may be ahead of the big wreck that's going to happen. We know it's going to happen. There may be multiple. So.
Yeah. So let's hop over to more of the, I guess, the driver breakdown. We have it a little bit different than we normally do. We have them sorted by starting position instead of by salary. So like Rich was saying, if you're playing cash games, what you want to do is basically just stack these drivers starting from 25th on back, basically Bailey Curry all the way down to Jason White starting last. Don't even worry too much about the salary. Just focus more on where they're starting, because the further back they start, the more place differential points that are going to be available for them to move forward. But like I said, if you're playing some of these GPPs like we are, you got to take some risks. So real quickly, Rich, let's go through, I guess, maybe the top 12 here, and I'll highlight some of the guys that I think might have a good chance of scoring well. So the guys that I'm focusing on of these top 12, I'm probably only going to have maybe 1, maybe 2 of these guys in a line at most. But if I have to pick, I think Justin Haley in the colleague cars, we've seen him win the last like 2 or 3 super speedway races in a row. Colleague always shows up fast. They have this program down, so I think he is going to be a contender for the race win on Saturday. And then probably pairing him with his teammates as well, because Jeb Burton and AJ Allmendinger, they're going to be drafting with him. So if all 3 of those cars are going to be together and all 3 of them are going to be running up front, there's a good chance that all 3 of them are going to score really well. But you also run in the risk of, if they're all together, if there's a wreck, they might all get collected and then completely kill your line. That's kind of the fun of super speedway racing, is your line could be terrible, and then like the next lap you could automatically be cashing, or the other way around, like your line looks great and then there's a wreck and then boom, you have like one of the worst lineups in the tournament. So I really like the colleague cars, but is there any other either teams or drivers kind of in this top 12 range that kind of catch your eye at all, Rich?
I do really like the colleague cars as well. They're always fast on the super speedways. They're fast just about everywhere. And I like the junior motorsports cars as well. They have a really good super speedway program, and there's a bunch of them. So when you're building lines, it may help you if you look at the drivers and the manufacturers, because the manufacturers tend to stick together and run together. So you could have 5 Chevrolets in a row and then 5 Toyotas in a row. There's a lot less Fords in the Xfinity series than there's the Cup series. So like a guy like Austin Cindric or Hemrick or somebody that's in a Ford, they don't have as many drafting partners, so they may get left out to dry in this race. But I agree. I if I'm coming up this high, I'm going to be looking at the colleague cars or the junior motorsports cars, and I'll probably in a 20 entry max have a mix of both.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. These are the races where your manufacturer matters more, and then your team matters more as well. Like Austin Cindric probably is in the best car in the field, but he's in a Ford, and I think there's maybe 1 or 2 other Fords in the entire Xfinity series, and that's going to be Riley Herbst in the 98. So when manufacturers are working together, Ford's unfortunately in the Xfinity series is kind of left out to dry. Whereas when you go to the Cup series, like Ford is usually the manufacturer to beat when you get to the super speedways. Nice thing about junior motorsports, they're a 4-car team, bunch of teammates to draft off of. Same with Toyota. Like there's not a bunch of Toyotas in the field, but with JGR, I think they're another 4-car team. So you should see, the Toyotas versus the Chevys kind of versus the Fords. That's kind of going to be the narrative, at least until you get down to the last, 5 laps or so. Then it's kind of, all bets are off. But so just sprinkle in a couple of those guys for GPPs. If you're playing cash, don't even touch anyone in the top 12. And then 13 through 24, I guess we'll start with you, Rich. I would imagine this would be the range that maybe you start grabbing a couple more drivers instead of, maybe focusing on that top 12.
Yeah, in this range, if you're going to play GPPs and you want to stay away from the top 12, you can grab like 2, maybe even 3 of these guys. Go 3 from this range and then 3 from the 25th on back. In here, we have you can see where we have the high ownership. I really like Ty Dillon. You can see this is his last race in the Xfinity, or last scheduled race in this car for the Xfinity series. He may or may not get another chance. That remains to be seen. I don't know if all the races, if they have drivers scheduled to race in them or not. But I think he's going to be going all out in this race. It's a good chance he could wreck the field, trying to make a move, trying to get up to the front. And just going on down through here, Riley Herbst, he's all right, but he's in a Ford, so not going to have that many guys to draft with. He'll have Austin Cindric, but I imagine they'll get shuffled back by both the Chevys and the Toyotas. So they may end up missing the wrecks if they end up running around in the back. Basically, all of these guys are plays, and at super speedways, that's the case. Everybody in the field is a playable driver.
Yeah, I think building off of that too, knowing that everyone's in play, you don't want to be overweight on, just, one or two or even a handful of guys. If you're building multiple lines, and I would build multiple lines, unless you're just doing like a cash single entry, then it's just everyone from the back. But if you're trying to take these risks, like if you're building, 20 lines, don't throw, Ryan Sieg into a bunch of them. Like just, you got to sprinkle it around and kind of hope for the best. But what I like to do is, like, equipment still somewhat matters, to some extent. So when I think of some of these guys that are in this range that have good equipment, I think of Ty Dillon, I think of Ryan Sieg, I think of Brandon Brown, Riley Herbst. Those are the guys that I would probably have more of, if anything, just because of the equipment that they're in. And some of them are a little bit more experienced than some of the other guys around there, but Coop's here, so we'll let him in too. But that's kind of really the range that I'm going to be focusing on for kind of that 13th to 24th. And then we can get to the back marker cars as well. And normally our back marker cars are all low interest, but this weekend they're all going to be high interest. And Coop, are you there?
Yeah.
Cool. Just in time. We wanted to pick your brain on some of these back marker cars, I guess, starting kind of 25th on back. Is there anyone you have a good feeling about?
Again, for Talladega, it's it can be very random, much more random than any other race other than Daytona. The super speedways, you just never know. So you just got to make sure that you play a couple lines. And make sure that you don't have too much exposure to any one driver, because any driver in this can go out. So anyone's fair game. These back marker cars, I'm sure they said it, but I would stack the back. I would really focus on these guys, try and pick out a couple that you like. Some that I think could potentially finish well, better than some of these others 9 times out of 10, as long as they stay clean. I don't mind LeBay. I like LeBay there. I don't mind Timmy Hill. He's starting a little further up, but I don't mind him. Probably going to get a little less ownership in that spot too, but he's cheap. But again, salary probably won't matter that much this week. And then I don't mind Colby Howard down there at 37 either. So there's a couple names I'll just throw out, just looking at it briefly. So I don't mind him either there. That's not a bad spot to land up either. But yeah, those are my thoughts on the back marker guys.
And I like Jason White. He's $8,400, but salary doesn't matter. He's starting 40th, and he's not going to hurt your line at all. So that would be a good spot to start off with when you're building your lines, because he can't hurt you at all. And if he's just riding around the back, he's going to move up as the wrecks happen.
Yeah, and it's, this is probably the only weekend that I would highly encourage you guys to have more ownership on, like a Bailey Curry, a Timmy Hill, all these guys starting 25th to 40th, more so than the guys.
Ryan Vargas, the Colby Howard,
yeah.
Yeah.
Like, these are the guys you actually want to like build around as kind of like your core lineup, and then sprinkle in some of those more, kind of risky, aggressive plays if you're playing GPPs and you're going, for the big prize. If you just want to cash in those tournaments, like, pick all 6 of your guys starting 25th on back, and you should be in good shape, even if it looks terrible until like lap 190 of 200 or however many they're running. Like, as soon as there's a wreck, these guys are just going to continue to move forward. And if they are in the wreck, it's not going to kill your line. You're not going to get a ton of negative points. Whereas if you play the guy in 10th and he wrecks out in the first wreck, you're automatically going to get negative, 25, negative 30 points. And it's going to be really hard to cash from there on out. So I think that's going to do it for the Xfinity video, unless you guys had any other final thoughts.
Yep. Good luck, everyone.
I have one final thought. So for super speedways, this sounds crazy. Some of the best lines I've ever had, I used a randomizer. So don't be afraid to throw a quarter or just a little bit on a fun line where you use a randomizer 1 through 40 and randomize your line and see what happens. Because I've had some lines that I look at it and I go, that's no way that's ever going to make any money. And then it ends up being my best line. That's the fun about these super speedways. So maybe have a little fun and do that on one of your lines.
Yep, I agree. That's these are always the most fun weekends to do that.
And don't be afraid to leave salary. Leaving multiple thousands of salaries at super speedways is the way to go.
All right, so once you guys are done building the Xfinity lines, hop over and check out our Cup video, and we'll probably be telling you a lot of the same thing over there.